blockbuster interviews with Bryan Harsin. And Chris joins us now from ESPN. Chris, always great to have you on. Thank you for your time. Take us through your most recent conversation with Harsin first.
Well, Paul, it's always good to be with you. Bryan was very candid. I think you saw, certainly, that's been about probably an hour and a half total with him. You saw some of his raw emotion. I think there's some scars that are still there from what happened back in February, in particular what he said his family had to go through. But I think more so than anything, what I came away from thinking is this guy's as resolute and as committed as he's ever been. I think there's some anger still there. He admitted that. But there's also a commitment, a really deep commitment to his football team, his players, his staff. He feels like his staff is more aligned now. He promoted some of his guys, Eric Kiesau, Jeff Schmedding. He brought in some new guys that have SEC chops, Ike Hilliard, Jimmy Brumbaugh, Christian Robinson, and understands that in the realm of the SEC, as you well know as a coach, you never take anything for granted. But at Auburn, with the complexities that exist there and have existed for a long time, he understands what the stakes are. And if there's an opening, if they start poorly, if there's anything that gives anybody a chance, the powers that be, the administration, he understands where that may lead. But I can tell you this, he ain't backing down.
Chris, let me ask you this. I would assume you know the question. If you don't, that's fine. Has anyone apologized to Bryan Harsin for dragging his name through the mud, his wife's name, his personal life? Has anyone from the administration or maybe from the top shelf of the booster realm called Bryan Harsin and said, we're sorry, we take responsibility. We tried to get you fired. We put out a bunch of spurious nonsense about your personal life that we knew was a fraud, but we wanted to fire you because we don't like you. Has anyone said anything like that to Bryan Harsin?
Not that I know of. And I want to be clear on this. He did not point the finger at anybody in particular. I mean,
Chris, I'm not suggesting he did, but we all know this didn't come out of clear view. I think he's handling it great, but I think if we did a forensic test, it wouldn't be that difficult to track where all this came from, or at least the same zip code.
Well, if you did that over the last 25 years, you'd probably.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I've got the zip code. You're right. Well said. It's the same zip code.
I did ask him point blank, did you ever get any clarification on what precipitated this, where it came from? And he very definitively said no. So that's probably the closest that he came to answering that question. He did say that he is going to try to be out and about more. I think he's going to do more things or try to do more things, get out, whether it's, boosters, whether it's things, golf trips. He's done some of those Auburn caravan type stops, more of those. I think that's something that, not that he didn't do any of them, I think he's going to make more of a concerted effort to do that. Will that do any good? Ultimately, it's going to come down to whether they win or lose games against the right people. And the other thing I ask him, and you know this to be the case, Paul, if they hold on to that lead the fourth quarter against Alabama last year, and I was there on the plains for that game, as much as some people did not want him to be their head coach and felt like he was not a fit, we wouldn't even be having this conversation now. Had they beaten Alabama, we would not even be talking about any of this. I feel 100% confident of that.
In talking to him, and I realize, Chris, you have relationships, and there's only so much anyone is willing to put on camera or in a story. But do you have a better idea, maybe, of where specifically this came from? Because all the mea culpas on his part and not getting over. I mean, all that's great, but it doesn't solve the problem. The cancer is still somewhere in the vicinity, is it not?
Well, and I think best I can sort of sort out in talking to him and others close to the program, I think a lot of this came from exit interviews that were conducted with players, with coaches, with parents of players, fairly or unfairly, that made accusations or said that relationships weren't good. Now, that may have been just a small part of it, but I think that's what ultimately precipitated this inquiry that was led by the administration. It was an administrative-directed inquiry where he was in Mexico at the time with his wife and essentially in football coaching purgatory, 8 days, I think. And then they brought him back, and I don't think at the end of the day, Paul, there wasn't enough there to fire the guy for cause. And I don't think at that point anybody was ready to stroke a check for $18.3 million. And the president's outgoing. There's a new president coming in, I think later this month. The new president's coming in there at Auburn, and here we are right now.